In the fading horizon of John's apocalyptic vision, a figure rides forth that chills even the spirit of prophecy itself. He is not clothed in fire like the first horseman, nor crowned in conquest like the second. He bears no scales like the third. Instead, he comes cloaked in an emptiness darker than night. The pale horse, and its rider, Death, and following him, unseen yet omnipresent, is something even more terrifying. Hades. This fourth horseman is not merely a symbol. He is a harbinger, an echo of judgment that transcends empires, ideologies, and flesh. What does it truly mean that Death rides at the end? What is the divine message embedded in his silent approach? To answer this, we must journey back to the visions of Patmos, and to the scrolls sealed with 7 divine seals. In Revelation 6:7-8, the Lamb opens the 4th seal, and the voice of the 4th living creature cries out, "Come," and behold, a pale horse. The Greek word used is chloros, a sickly, ghastly green, the color of decay. Its rider is named Death, and Hades follows close behind. And authority was given to them over 1/4 of the earth, to kill with sword, with famine, with pestilence, and by the wild beasts of the earth. 4 judgments, 4 forms of devastation, and yet only one rider. In ancient Hebrew thought, the number 4 represents universality, the 4 winds, the 4 corners of the earth, the completeness of divine action. This 4th rider is not merely another stage of wrath. He is the summation, the convergence of all the previous judgments, conquest, war, scarcity, embodied in one final, ghastly silence. His arrival marks a shift in the heavenly vision, where the first 3 horsemen seem to enact divine permissions. This 4th one brings divine finality. He does not come to disrupt economies or governments. He comes to dismantle the illusion of human control. Notice what follows him. Not a kingdom, not glory, but Hades, the very grave itself. This duo, Death and Hades, mirrors a pattern seen throughout Scripture where sin spreads, death follows, and where death reigns, the grave opens wide. But here, this pair does not react to human sin alone. They are unleashed, given authority. By whom? By the Lamb himself. And that changes everything. This is not chaos. This is orchestration, a divine reckoning encoded in symbolic flesh. Yet the greatest mystery remains. Why is he pale? Why not crimson, or black, or golden? Because pale is not a color of power. It is the absence of life. The final horseman is not a storm. He is the silence after. He is the breath that no longer returns. And that is where our journey begins. To understand the 4th horseman, we must confront not only who he is, but what he is allowed to do. Revelation does not say he comes by his own will. It says authority was given to them. Who gives such authority to death? Who permits the release of famine, pestilence, and wild beasts upon the world? The Lamb, the very one who is slain, who now opens the seals of destiny, permits this final judgment to ride. This is not a demonic rebellion, this is divine design. And that truth changes how we interpret every plague, every collapse, every moment when the world seems to tremble. The 4th horseman reveals that God is not absent in catastrophe. He is sovereign within it. In biblical tradition, death is never the end. Job cried out, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away." The rider on the pale horse is not Satan. He is not a demon. He is a servant of God, no less than the angel who passed through Egypt on Passover night. The Hebrew concept of malach, angel or messenger, encompasses both mercy and judgment. What if this rider is in fact a form of angelic executioner? What if he embodies the fulfillment of God's final warnings? Consider this. While the other horsemen affect systems, conquest, war, scarcity, this rider touches the one thing we all share: mortality. His sword is famine, his breath is plague, his wake is wilderness, and his purpose is unveiling. He strips away every illusion. Wealth cannot stop him. Power cannot slow him. Even the righteous must pass through his shadow. And yet, in his pale presence, something divine happens. The soul is unmasked. The veil between flesh and eternity is torn. This horseman is not simply destruction. He is revelation. And still, he does not ride alone. The Scripture says Hades followed him. This is more than poetic imagery. In the ancient world, Hades, or Sheol in Hebrew thought, was the place of the dead, the unseen realm. That it follows death shows us a divine sequence. First the body falls, then the soul is gathered. But where to? And by whose hand? This is the most unsettling part of the 4th seal. It reveals that even death is not final. There is something that waits beyond the grave, something that follows, that watches, that receives, and it, too, is under authority. The Lamb not only permits death to ride, he commands the entire process of passage, from breath to grave to eternity. And this forces us to ask, if death and Hades obey the voice of the Lamb, then who are we to resist his will? The 4th horseman, then, becomes a mirror. He reflects not only the wrath of God, but the fragility of man. He comes not just to kill, but to reveal what lies beneath, in nations, in empires, in hearts, and what is found there will determine what comes next. When the pale horse rides, it is not with the thunder of war or the clash of swords. It comes with silence, a silence so deep it echoes in the soul. The fourth seal does not contain the kind of dialogue seen in other parts of Revelation. There is no angel explaining, no elder interpreting, no lament, only a voice that says, "Come," and then a vision of death. This silence is not absent. It is divine pause. It is what happens when God stops speaking, not because he is gone, but because the judgment has already been declared. In the Hebrew Scriptures, silence from God was often a sign of completion, of a decree that cannot be undone. In Amos, it is written, "Be silent, for the day of the Lord is near." The fourth horseman does not need to speak because his presence is a message. The time for decision is over. Judgment rides now. Yet in this silence, a deeper mystery arises. Why does God allow his own creation, those he formed from dust and breathed into, to be touched by this rider? Why is even the faithful not exempt from the approach of the pale horse? This is the question of every prophet, every martyr, every soul that has ever asked, why do the righteous suffer? But the answer lies not in the death itself, but in what it reveals. The fourth horseman uncovers the foundation of our trust. When the ground shakes, when famine comes, when plague surrounds, do we still believe? Do we still worship the Lamb who opens the seals, even when the seal unleashes suffering? This is the final test, not of strength but of surrender, and not of knowledge but of trust. The pale horse does not only ride through lands, he rides through hearts. He separates those who cling to the world from those who cling to eternity. He silences every excuse, every distraction, every false hope. He is the thinning of the veil. And this is not the first time death has walked among the faithful. In Egypt, death passed through every household, but those who bore the mark of the blood were spared. In Ezekiel, the Lord commands a mark upon those who mourn over the abominations of Jerusalem, and death passes over them. In the final days, the question will not be whether death comes. It will be whether we are marked, not by a seal of man, but by the Spirit of the living God. Revelation speaks of a seal upon the foreheads of the servants of God, a seal that protects not from suffering, but from separation. Death may touch the body, but it cannot claim the soul. The fourth horseman rides under the authority of the Lamb, and the Lamb knows those who are his. He permits the storm, but he walks with us in the fire. And this is where faith becomes flame, not in the absence of death, but in defiance of its power. The silence of God is not the absence of love. It is the proving of it. It is the stillness before the resurrection. And the pale horse is not the end. He is the gate. There is a rhythm behind Revelation that most overlook, a cadence not of prophecy alone, but of heavenly time. The four horsemen do not ride at random. They are summoned, one by the living creatures around the throne. Each seal, each rider, each vision unfolds with terrifying precision. The fourth horseman, though last among the four, is not least in significance. In fact, he marks a transition. After his ride, the nature of the seals changes. The vision moves from earthly catastrophe to heavenly perspective. Martyrs cry out, stars fall, the Lamb prepares to return. The fourth seal is the final earthly warning. It is the moment when the physical world is stripped bare, and humanity stands exposed. This rider does not only bring death, he ends delusion. That is his true power. The delusion that we are in control, that our kingdoms will last, that our breath is ours to keep. And in the wake of that exposure, something remarkable happens in the text. John sees the souls of the slain under the altar, crying out for justice. Who are these souls? They are those who have passed through the storm, through the fire, through the pale shadow, and they are not forgotten. The altar in heaven remembers. Their voices are not silent. Even in death, they speak, and God listens. This reveals a staggering truth. Death does not end the story. It accelerates it. It brings the righteous closer to the throne. The fourth horseman, though terrifying, is not our enemy. He is a gatekeeper, and his ride signals the nearing of the end, not of hope, but of deception. In the ancient prophetic texts, death was always tied to exposure. When Isaiah died, Isaiah saw the Lord. When Herod died, the angel returned. When the fourth horseman rides, the veil of the age begins to tear. But here is the deeper mystery. This rider does not appear again in Revelation. He rides once, and then vanishes into the unfolding of divine judgment. Why? Because his work is not to rule, but to prepare. He is not the climax. He is the summons. After him comes the gathering, the division, the wrath, the return. He is the final echo before the voice of God shakes heaven and earth. And this summons is not only for the wicked, it is for all. The rider touches kings and peasants, scholars and fools. He rides not with malice, but with mandate. His presence asks one final question. What are you building your life upon? Sand or rock? Empire or eternity? The fourth horseman has no favorites. His blade is impartial. His silence is universal, but his purpose is holy. He rides not to destroy without cause, but to awaken what sleeps, to break what must fall, to level what hides the truth. And behind him the gears of heaven turn, the Lamb watches, the angels ready, and time, as we know it, begins to collapse. The fourth horseman is the only rider whose very name is revealed, Death, and he is the only one followed by Hades. This pairing is not poetic coincidence. It is theological precision. In biblical thought, death is not annihilation. It is transition. And Hades is not a monster. It is a realm. This realm follows the rider because where he goes, the unseen follows. The fourth horseman is a harbinger not of finality, but of decision. And herein lies the final terror and the final hope. Revelation tells us that after the seals, after the trumpets, after the bowls, death and Hades themselves are thrown into the lake of fire. That means even death dies. Even the grave is buried. This rider, who once moved freely across the earth, who once claimed kings and saints alike, will one day stand before the throne, and the Lamb will judge him. This is the end of all fear. The rider is not eternal. The pain is not permanent. The grave is not God. The Lamb is. The vision John receives is not meant to paralyze, but to purify. Those who have ears to hear will not tremble before the pale horse. They will prepare. They will rise. They will endure, because their eyes are not fixed on the horse, but on the one who opened the seal, the one who went before death, passed through it, and rose. Jesus did not avoid the fourth horseman, he overcame him. The cross was not an accident. It was a confrontation. The Lamb met death face to face, and shattered his dominion from within. The empty tomb is proof that the pale rider has a limit, and every soul who follows the Lamb shares in that victory. This is the final message of the fourth horseman. He is real, but he is not ultimate. He rides, but not forever. He wounds, but cannot destroy. He follows orders, but is not in control. And when the heavens split and the Lamb returns, the rider will be no more. This is the hope we must cling to in the days ahead. Not that death will be distant, but that it will be defeated. Not that pain will vanish now, but that glory awaits beyond it. Not that we will escape the storm, but that we will pass through it, sealed, watched, redeemed. The fourth horseman reminds us that all flesh is grasped, but he also reminds us that there is a word that stands forever. And that word is not a scroll. It is a person, a lamb, standing as though slain, alive, radiant, victorious. In the face of death, we lift our eyes to life, and we proclaim, the pale horse rides, but the king returns.